construction industry in itself contributes to about 39% of global emissions, which is close to 20 billion tons annually, which is a huge amount. Which is why, it absolutely blows my mind that if you take material science in general and the impact of accelerators like RedZone in this space, it can go up to about anywhere from 36%, so about 19 billion tons, which absolutely blows my mind. It's an industry. Material science is something we definitely need to care about.
It is. These numbers are mind-blowing.
You're listening to Climate Conversations with Divya, brought to you by Purple Fix Productions. In this episode, we dive into the transformative power of advanced material sciences in combating climate change, featuring insights on cutting-edge startups, innovations, and their real-world impact on our planet. Stay tuned. Welcome to Climate Conversations with Divya, the podcast where we dive deep into the toughest climate challenges and explore the innovations shaping our sustainable future. I'm your host, Divya, and today I'm excited to speak with Andrea Cadelli, Program Manager for RedZone by SAES, a unique accelerator dedicated to advancing breakthroughs in material sciences and climate tech. Andrea, would you like to talk a little bit more about your work that sits at the intersection of innovation, commercialization, and sustainability, as I understand it?
It's a mix of many different things. And by the way, thank you so much, Divya, for hosting me today. It's a pleasure to have the possibility to discuss with you about all what we have been doing since today and what will be the future of our program. So basically, RedZone is a program dedicated to material science startups.
Right.
This is a program backed by a company, which is an Italian multinational company, SAES, located in Milan and present worldwide in Italy, in Germany, in the US, and the Far East. And this company has always been an advanced materials company. So since its inception in the 40s of the previous century, so you might imagine that. Yep, it's quite old story.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm working with this company since, let's say, 10 years. But I can just report what I know about the company, about the past. But it has been a quite interesting story, as it is very consistent. So you should imagine how materials may be conceived in the 40s, in the 60s, in the 80s, and then more recently in the new century. The scope of the company has always been that to improve the products of our customers and as well the technologies which are based on high tech by the implementation and the development and industrialization of advanced materials. Just to name a little keywords, a little of key information to better define what SAES is, as it is a B2B company, so definitely you could not find what we do on the shelves of a supermarket. SAES contributing to the invention at the time of the radio valves, so for radio systems, and then for the televisions. So do you remember the old square big boxes, TVs? All of us have had in their houses. So all those television were working thanks to a product that SAES was manufacturing and almost selling to every single TV manufacturer in the world that was able to maintain the vacuum inside the tube and definitely making the television last 10 years instead of 10 minutes. Right. And then SAES has been playing a major role in development of particle accelerators. If you go to Geneva to the CERN, the vacuum inside, so a spice level vacuum, ultra level vacuum, physicists will say it has been granted by the solutions we are providing, but as well as the old, which are still in place today, tube lamps, which are being replaced by LEDs today, but definitely also those lamps have been working with our solutions. And today we are providing our competencies and products in different fields that might encompass the medical devices to the advanced packaging, food packaging, with compostable properties, and more recently, even in the cosmetics field. So this is just to introduce what is the company and what we do.
Absolutely. It's really great to know. What I'd like to know further is what sets RedZone apart as an accelerator, and what specific challenges in material sciences are you addressing?
Definitely the good question after the introduction. We tackle open innovation within the company. So I'm in charge of managing the program. I work within the innovation area of SAES. And so myself and all my colleagues working with me, we are in charge of envisioning how to introduce innovative functions, innovative processes in the company in a way that is aside from a pure technological development, which has been always the backbone of the company growth since today. So the way we would like to interact with the external world is because we are pretty aware that innovation will come with all the possibility of connecting, networking, and creating ecosystem we have with external players, external also founders and startuppers, so that we decided to craft out a program which is the place for startups to interact with the corporate, with size, and so to provide a mutual benefit for the company as to in taking opportunities from the outside. So RedZone is the framework in which we cooperate with startups, and as well as it is a program for startup, of course, we need to be an entity which is able to have a dialogue with them, to understand them, and to stay on the same page every day with a approach which is definitely futuristic in terms of hoping to see what's next with them.
No, that is very fascinating. I feel how RedZone bridges innovation and market readiness in general. But what, according to you, makes material sciences such a critical component of climate tech? I know we, usually don't like to box things into one or the other category, but still, if we had to, what makes material sciences such a critical component of climate tech? And how does the accelerator, RedZone, basically identify which startups to support?
Good question. There are many ways to answer this question, actually, but definitely starting from our perspective,
right?
Which is we as a company would like to innovate with materials, the future of the technologies that will have for sure an impact on the future of our lives and our planet as well. So that in order to do so, what we would like to do is considering, as we always did in the past, and as always we think that advanced materials will be in the future, so to consider them as an enabling component, so like a cornerstone for the development of technologies or application on even markets which are probably today at their infancy or childhood, but that in future for sure that we will see a moment in which the future generation will forget about things are made today, and they will consider those kind of innovation we are working on today as something which is granted, which has already been like this. So when we think about innovating with materials, and again, especially we are focused only on advanced materials. So just to say advanced materials are those materials we are refer currently like smart materials, intelligent materials, functional materials, so these kind of things. And they will represent for sure one of the backbones of the innovation of the future. Advanced materials are a recognized pillar of the deep tech wave of innovation.
If we could possibly sort of zero down on industries that you're usually seeing in your startups. So maybe, as I understand it, I think advanced materials have immense use in cement industry, for example, or lightweight materials for transportation, energy storage systems, bio-based materials, circular economy practices, or renewable energy technologies. What are you seeing within the startups that you support? Where are their efforts mostly concentrated on?
So our vision of advanced materials in the future is surely related to different areas of innovation in which we do believe that not only advanced material, but also SAES will play a role. I'm pretty sure that advanced material will play a role in all the industries we are working with today, and even in the industries that are currently not existing. That's a nice and interesting part of all this. But obviously, we need also to understand that as a manufacturing company, we need to be very synergic with what we can do with all our expertise and technological background and know-how we have built in the previous years, so that our vision is strictly related to what can be done on let's say a manufacturing point of view, so that for example, just to name a few innovation areas we might be interested in, I just say SAES is currently entering the world of cosmetics, so that we are working with inorganic materials at the moment, but definitely we're also interested in expanding the technological platforms we might be working with other solutions. And this kind of market is very interesting because you know, Divya, that cosmetics are changing a lot. There are a lot of requests of replacing microplastics or going vegan, and this implies the fact that new solutions, new technology has to be found, for example, based on biotechnology, but also on the upcycling of materials. And when you talk about this kind of raw materials, so anyway, based technologies, what you come up with is active principles, molecules, whatever, which may be used in cosmetics, but then you need to treat them as an advanced material, as you need to protect them, you need to craft them out in a proper way, engineerize them in a way that they can, of course, being safe and be functional in the proper way with the respect of the application, like can be a skincare product or a hair product. You were mentioning also hydrogen industry. Yeah, that's something that for sure we are seeing it, and we will see even more in the future how the impact of the green hydrogen will be on all our communities. And of course, if you go down into, okay, what's the hydrogen technology made of? So there are generations of hydrogen, and this is made through certain type of equipments, and those equipments are based on certain type of components, and these components are in one of the components are the membranes, and the membranes, there are different type of technologies in which, of course, advanced materials again will play a role in the definition of the base characteristics and the base properties and performances of these materials that will enable the possibility to have really sustainable, economically and environmentally sustainable green hydrogen production in the future. And
wow, that's so exciting. I don't know if you're able to name some specific startups that you're working with in that region, or certain things to watch out for. Totally okay if, there's an NDA, there's a hush-hush around it.
It's not a secret.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a secret, and I hope they will be also happy that I'm mentioning them. So we are currently working with 4 startups, and so these numbers are not that big. So as a program for startups, we are not working with 15, 20 startups as may be used for an acceleration program. The reason is that developing technology, especially in the deep tech field, is tough. It takes time, takes investments, it takes resources and commitment from those who are working with.
Which is better, I feel. I think smaller cohorts helps you dispense most of your time and have like proper feedback within those startups itself. Like, I don't think they get lost. I think smaller cohorts are better for sure. Did you find that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, working with a few startups gives you the possibility to focus more on them.
Exactly.
Obviously, you need also to lower the risk as well as when we think about the program itself. So as managing the program, I have to think about how to lower as much as possible the risks, and usually this is done by increasing the number of startups. This is a classical VC approach, but definitely in this case, what we would like to do is really get in love with the startup and deeply understand their needs, and we want them to understand our opportunities so that we can craft out a common project which encompasses all the possible aspects, ranging from IP, so intellectual property, to technology development, to market opportunity and be ready even to pivot along a journey which lasts about 1 year within our program. So if you wanted to know some names, I can tell you that, oh, well, we are working with a couple of startups in the cosmetics area, but they're doing two different things which are very, very interesting. One is called Vortex, and Vortex, they are from Turin in Italy, and they are basically upcycling the agri-food waste, whichever it might be, but basically maybe based on apple scraps or blueberries or hazelnuts or whatever, and these scraps will be usually recycled or put into the garbage, we might say, from the industry. But then what they are doing is that they are taking these scraps, they are stabilizing, and then they are able to extract the active principle which are inside. Just imagine the apple juice. So we eat the inside of the apple, but every one of us is aware that the good things are in the skin. So the skin is considered a scrap. So you can get this. Yeah, it is. It is. So that for an apple juice company, it is like this. And so they are taking this and taking out the active principles that are important for specific application in the cosmetic field and creating this way a cosmetic which is definitely bio-based and natural at all. Another startup we're working with is doing something completely different.
Could you remind me the name of the startup that you mentioned before?
Vortex.
Sorry?
Vortex.
Vortex?
Yes.
So it's basically an apple juice company that's using the scraps to turn it into... No, okay, sorry.
They are a startup that which their unique selling proposition is to be the contact point between the agri-food industry and the cosmetic industry, so that they take the scraps from the agri-food industry and then they convert them into raw materials for the cosmetic industry. And by the way, they're also creating with their partners a line of products which is called Naste Beauty.
Okay.
This is for marketing purposes.
Wow, okay.
And so as you can imagine, they are in a stage of development which is, let's say, not at the beginning, but definitely they are a grown company. They are scaling.
Right.
In another case, we are working with Bach Farm, so Bach Bacteria Farm. And in this case, they are pre-seed startups from Sardinia, so again from Italy. And they're doing something completely different. So they're working with bacteria. So they are experts in biotechnology. So they use reactors to grow bacteria. Which kind of bacteria? That's the interesting part, is that these bacteria are extremophile bacteria. So bacteria is able to withstand very harsh and complex environments, like, for example, the outer space. So if you put them onto as a rocket and you throw them into space, they will be able to survive even in the open. Why? Because they have incredible UV, ultraviolet resistant capabilities. And just imagine what you can make out of UV resistant bacteria. So you can extract the active principle, which is delivering the UV resistant property, and then use this to craft out something to avoiding getting burned under the sun on Earth, like a skincare product, sunscreen. And so even in this case, the goal is targeting the cosmetic market, but again, in a way that we will craft out a product, at least an MVP, of course, within the RedZone program, which is able to replace the current state-of-the-art technology in sunscreens, which is based also on microplastics, which is something that everyone is willing to get rid of.
Wow, that is so interesting. I mean, I'm imagining the product would be much better than the product that we have, these days, and especially with skin cancer on the rise. I think it's an amazing technology to have. Very innovative. Definitely very innovative.
You know what, Divya, is not only that we're looking for performance improvement. So performance improvement is just a part of the story today. So the other side is creating solutions which have, of course, a reduced negative or even a positive impact. And so these technologies will be replacing those which represent the state of the art today. So we are playing on the both sides, so performance improvement and or the possibility to have a positive impact on the planet and on, of course, the future of every one of us.
If I remember correctly, I think I read somewhere there was another company that used bacillus lysate in their products, and they increased the effectiveness of their SPF 30 sunscreen by 22 to 33%, depending on like the concentrations they used. That is, it's crazy the potential that this market holds.
Just consider that everything you, and this is something that it is important to underline, that we are very interested in the biotech field. As you might imagine, I'm a materials engineer and also nature lover. So if we couple these couple of things, we can imagine that nature has taken billions and billions of years to develop what we can find today living on this planet. So that we just had 1 century more or less of scientific growth, so that nature is still an edge with respect of the innovation that can be, in some fields, of course, made by humans. So that we should learn from nature and we should get what the nature did best within all these years, and this is called biotechnology.
That is so beautifully put. I couldn't have put it in a better way. Oh, we should definitely, put your background to a better use. I like to have this section in my podcast, which is basically quantifying the impact, right? I love to be able to say, okay, we're sitting down, we're trying to quantify the impact of all the technologies we're talking about. Because oftentimes, I think people talk about technologies but do not realize the percentage of impact it has on the climate that we put together. So what I did do to prepare for this conversation, I did my own research to try and quantify on my side. We can discuss together, and your background, you can tell me if this makes sense to you. Yeah? That sounds good?
For sure. Sounds great.
Super. So I was looking into the different material science technologies and the amount of impact that each technology has. And I shortlisted, so basically starting with decarbonization technologies, because they're another, bigger segment of this. So cement and concrete, for example, they contribute 7% of global emissions, which is close to 3.6 billion tons annually. Innovations in material science, such as carbon capture, for example, can reduce the emissions by 30 to 70%. So that means the potential reduction is close to 2 to 5% of total global emissions, which is close to about like anywhere between 1 to 2.5 billion tons annually. That blows my mind. I don't know. How do those statistics feel to you?
So just consider in the previous call for startups, we were also looking for solutions based on carbon capture and storage.
Right.
And so it is important to understand that there are different technologies. And for example, there are technology based on the point of use capture. So community which is working on this is targeting the CO2 emitted at the place, so on the plant, whichever might be the source. So just capturing once it is created. But this won't solve the whole problem, as CO2 is present everywhere in the planet at a higher level than before, and so that we also need to get rid of the CO2 which is present in the atmosphere, and that's already there. So there are also other technologies which are called direct air capture, which are capable of capturing the CO2 in excess in the planet. But basically, one of the most relevant and proficient technologies that has ever been created by nature is called trees, vegetation.
Yeah.
And so starting from the inspiration we might get, obviously, if you would like to do something which is more based on technology, of course, there are many different ways to tackle this challenge. And we also have to consider that there are two sides of this, many sides, but in the case of the technology development, there are two sides. One is engineering. So engineering, whatever it is needed to craft out a system which is able to capture, to store, to do whatever it is needed to do. On the other hand, the technology should be based on something which is, in this case, science-based. And one of these aspects is, of course, materials which enable the technology to work properly and with a higher performance. So, for sure, the KPIs you found are interesting and definitely we are talking about also numbers. And obviously, as everything will take time. We are still at the beginning, so in the Gardner cycle, we're at the hype moment, so that we will realize that things have to be done in a different way, but then in some years we will be able to.
For sure. Andrea, like what was also interesting, so this wasn't the best statistic that I did find. I looked into building materials and insulation as well, for example. And building operations and construction. So construction industry in itself contributes to about like 39% of global emissions, which is close to 20 billion tons annually, which is a huge amount. And all the technologies that you've mentioned as well, advanced materials in general for insulation and low carbon building can reduce energy from anywhere close to 20 to 50%, which can range from minimum a 7% reduction of total global emissions to about 19% of total global emission reductions. Again, these are not small numbers, which is why like it absolutely blows my mind that if you take material science in general and the impact of accelerators like RedZone in this space, if we're focusing all on so even cosmetics industry, cement, concrete, lightweight materials, building materials, energy storage, circular materials, recyclable, renewable energy technologies, the minimum estimate comes about to 11.16 billion tons annually, which is anywhere close to about 20% of total emissions that we need to reduce, versus a maximum estimate, so it can go up to about anywhere from like 36%, so about 19 billion tons, which absolutely blows my mind. Like it's an industry, material science is something we definitely need to care about.
It is. These numbers are mind-blowing for sure. And I may report you an example of something, a technology which is, to me, has always been really, really intriguing and which might be applicable to many different fields. But the one that works most as an example, of course, is building industry, so construction industry. So just consider how many refrigerators, how many mostly air conditioning systems that are in place today, especially in those areas which are growing the most. Like consider the Middle East, consider Indonesia, consider China, in which the climate is very hot and very humid. So that all the new buildings which are arising in that places, of course, will need AC systems working for the most of the year. So that this consumes a lot of energy, and the energy obviously generate pollution if it is not created through green sources. So that how smart materials may play a role in helping all this is by studying, for example, the so-called meta materials. So some materials which have properties of interaction with radiation. I mean wavelengths. Might be visible light, might be even a sound wave, it might be infrared, it might be ultraviolet or whatever. And these materials are specifically crafted, coupling special materials, but also a special micro, nano, or even at the bigger scale structure. And that's the cool part. If you're able to craft out something like this, for example, in the building industry, you will be able to create, let's say, two-dimensional foils to which you can use to cover the rooftop of the houses, and these the materials are able, for example, to absorb the heat from that comes from inside the house, which you would like to get it at a lower temperature because heat is infrared light. and they are able to convert this heat into another wavelength, which is different, and this wavelength will be released towards the sky. And if you are able to convert to a specific wavelength in a specific window of all the wavelengths which are absorbed by the atmosphere, causing the greenhouse effect, or those who are not absorbed by the atmosphere, so that if you are able to fit that window in which the atmosphere does not absorb the radiation you are emitting, you are definitely sending the heat you are generating on Earth to the outer space. And this is totally free because it does not consume any energy. It does not need any connection to any kind of power source. It's completely passive. And this is really, really, really cool example of how advanced material may play a role even in fields in which we are not imagining. But by the way, this is something that, again, to talk about not nature, but to talk about history in this case. Think about Greece. Think about the Greece islands. What color are they? They're completely white, and the reason is very similar. As on the one hand to reflect the sunlight, but on the other hand, the titanium, which is a component of the pigments of the white, that the white that is the typical color of those houses, is able to expel the heat outside the house. So this comes from something which is already known by human society, but as well we need deep technology to understand how to make it effective and how to not generate, for example, greenhouse.
Such a cool fact, because I did not know that radiative cooling and solar reflectance had a part to play in Greece. You're so right too. I love that you mentioned developing areas like Middle East and China and other sort of regions that definitely will be contributing more and more. I mean, you cannot stop development. Development is very necessary as a humanity for economic considerations to consider. So those are some very important challenges and considerations to have in terms of like climate variability, scalability, and cost. I'm thinking about what would it look like developing and deploying these advanced materials at scale. What would be the cost of manufacturing be like? So I think that would be an interesting challenge that the industry needs to figure out for sure.
That's definitely the challenge for the most of the startups who would like to grow and become of course enterprises. The key step in when we're talking about deep tech is overcoming the valley of death of the technological development, which usually it is related to the fact that startups are looking for scale plants to produce in quantity whatever they have been developed within a laboratory, and that's the point in which there is a deep need of resources, of money, and of time and competencies. And that's where we as RedZone we are helping the startups because we are putting in touch these skills and the resources from an industrial company like SAES with the vision and the proposition of the startup within specific areas. And just to mention how we craft out the program to be as sustainable as possible on the industrial side, everything we have been putting in place in our laboratories in Milano, every single piece of equipment to make, to mix, to mill, to spread, to coat a material or whatever, it is supposed to be scalable. So we are only using technologies at a lab scale which have a correspondent scalable pilot plant that can be created and that can be put in place to help so the startups, but also ourselves in the development of whatever we are doing internally in SAES to find out a solution on the lab scale and then transfer this to an industrial scale almost seamlessly. Obviously, there are many challenges related to this because you can imagine that moving from 1 gram of material or 10 centimeter of material to tons or to kilometers, has got an impact on three different dimensions. One is the environmental dimension, so it has to be environmentally sustainable, so no use of solvents and these kind of things. The other thing, it has to be economically sustainable, of course.
Right.
So the increase of size of the equipment, so the scalability implies, of course, must imply a reduction of the cost
Right.
related to the material, because the material has to be anyway competitive. Although it is technological and it carries a lot of interesting, cool function, at the end of the day, it has to be a piece of the market, and the market has to accept. So that's really, really important. And thirdly, it has, of course, to be industrially sustainable, so that even the industry has to be able to craft out a material in a way which is not implying a total revolution of whatever it is needed to do so, because even industries are needing to properly invest their own resources into something which is viable even for the future.
Wow, that is brilliant. That you already answered a question that I had, which is, what would it take for startups in this space to have success? And it's brilliant how you're supporting the startups. Are there any other factors that you're looking at in terms of, let's say, policies or sort of partnerships, commercial partnerships, POCs, or mentorships, anything that you're looking at the moment to help these startups better?
So definitely, yes. Technology is the key part of our program, of the RedZone program, but it cannot go alone. We perfectly know that the startup at first, but also all of us which are supporting the startup must be aware of the fact that the most important thing is that the market is needing something, and that technology you are mastering is able to solve the problem in a sustainable way. So that if there is not connection like this, the development of the technology itself won't bring you anywhere. So this is a lesson that has been learned by anyone in this world recently, or even less recently. That's why we are also providing the startups which are working with us all the know-how which is accessible within the company. Just to make some example, they can access our expert intellectual property, so that you can imagine we have experts working on patents, especially in the realm of advanced materials and their application, so that if a startup working within the material science is looking for someone helping them in understanding whether there is freedom to operate, or whether their current patent is valuable or not, or whether there is someone else in the world which is doing something else which is similar and might be problematic, so they can ask our expert, which are for sure the best people around to talk about patents in material science. But the same can be said for our legal office, but also our design house, which might help those startups which are not envisioning only to craft out a product, but also to develop something which is not to craft out a material, but to craft out a product that goes on the market. So you will need to reach your customers in order to understand whether you're doing good or not, and to get feedback. So how do you reach them? You cannot just bring them a plastic bag with some material in it. You need to carry out something that demonstrates the feasibility and the worthiness of the material, so that we will be able to help them in the strategy, in also even the definition of a website, or a packaging for a material that has to be delivered to different to customers or to another industry. And not only, we are also helping startups with our internal experts and researchers, which might be very expert of a market, and so that they can help the startup in understanding not only the technology, but the needs of a company which is working within a specific area since years. And my colleague have the let's say the knowledge of what it is needed, what it is definitely not needed, and what might be the advices coming from their experience in the past. And lastly, which is something that I'm very also interested in evolving in the future, is a wide network of mentors which can provide guidance, which might provide project management activities, supervision, but also experts which are able to help the startups in understanding deeply an experience from their own experience in as startuppers, as founders, as CEOs, CTOs, whatever they have been doing in a specific industry. So this package is the part related to, let's say, the less technical development part, which must go in parallel to the technical development activities that has to be carried out along this 1 year program, and to which the goal at the end of the day is to develop a scalable minimum viable product in partnership with SAES, which is, of course, something which is interesting for a customer, for a market, or for SAES itself, not only on the technological standpoint, but also, of course, on the marketable standpoint.
Right. No, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that.
What?
Maybe last 2 questions, if you'll allow me. So we already talked about a lot on future trends, challenges, but if you had to sort of summarize it and share your perspective very briefly on future trends or challenges in material supply chains or regulatory hurdles that you wanted to address, finally, what would they be?
So I might summarize what we will be looking for in the future.
Yeah.
And of course, our interest is based on technologies. So the technologies, for example, in the field of cosmetics, biocosmetics, cosmeceutical industry, nutraceuticals are obviously vegan-based solutions based on biotech or upcycled materials and this kind of active principles, enzymes, and so on. While if we talk about hydrogen, for sure we are interested into specific materials to be used in anion exchange membranes, or as well as the membranes itself, which are needing material-based solutions. Again, then we were talking before about cooling surfaces, passive cooling surfaces, but they are just a part of a realm which we call smart surfaces. And for example, just think about all the innovation that might be arising in the future related to, just to name something that is more, to me, sounds more cool than maybe realistic at the moment, which is the invisibility cloak. The one from Harry Potter, but definitely it is feasible on the infrared light. And obviously this comes from the military world, but definitely if you Google for it, invisibility cloak, there are some examples of how this technology is becoming a reality in some areas, even with visible lights. And so there are many different areas in which we can refer with smart surfaces. And lastly, it is something we didn't mention yet, but it is important to be underlined, is technology related to packaging. So for example, we are working a lot with compostable coated films, so that if you go to the supermarket and you look for these new products which are wrapped into a special plastic, we can call it that way, in which you can read on, you can throw the envelope, the packaging in the organic fraction. So that's an innovation that comes from a chain of players in which we are part of, and definitely there are many other possible technologies related to the development of novel food and even not food packaging technologies, which might be adhesives, might be new inks, might be new processes to also related to paper, for example, so on and so forth. That is, these are, let's say, these 4 are the areas we are looking for for the future.
I had a couple of consulting projects related to mushroom-based packaging products as well. So I'm happy that you mentioned that, given, again, packaging industry in itself contributes close to 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide or GES emissions annually. So it's a huge impact. definitely love that you mentioned the cosmetics industry, because if you consider the impact that can be amplified given the influence cosmetic industry has on consumer behavior in general, to set trends in sustainability, driving adoption of similar practices in other sectors, I think it's an amazing sector to be looking at, even if you had to consider revenues, for example. But of course, great. I am definitely going to look up the Harry Potter thing. That is super cool. Who wouldn't like to have a Harry Potter cloak here? Thank you for sharing so much. I think the last question that I have, so last question for our listeners who want to engage with climate tech or support the work accelerators like RedZone are doing, what steps can they take to contribute meaningfully, even if it is to influence regulatory patterns or sort of help frame policies? What would you recommend to our listeners?
So first of all, if all your listeners are interested in getting in touch with us in order to understand whatever that can be done, of course they can get in contact with me, of course, right. and then aside of this, what we are looking for is building as much as possible European and even not European ecosystem of partners, which encompasses all the possible players within this very wide, let's say, world we are playing it, which of course I'm talking to founders, but I'm also talking to those mentors which are interested in being part of the program, but also and not only venture capital and business angels, which are of course a key step, which we are not mentioning because we are not playing as a VC, but definitely startups are interested in getting funding from an additional player of the value chain of the startup development, but as well as other accelerators, other programs, even corporate programs in which, by the way, we are even partnering with. So I won't say there is a competition on that, because we are really, when you look at the future, you are doing it open-hearted and with the best proposition ever, so that everyone is really, really welcome. And of course, those who are interested in learning what we are doing or divulgating what can be the impact of RedZone, as you are wonderfully doing, Divya. Thanks so much for doing so.
Absolutely.
There will be more than welcome to get in touch with us.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation. Andrea, thank you for sharing your insights and for the incredible work you're doing at RedZone to advance material sciences and climate solutions. Hats off from my end. To our listeners, we've explored how accelerators like RedZone are driving innovation and scaling impactful solutions for a sustainable future. Thank you for tuning into Climate Conversations with Divya. Don't forget to follow the podcast for more thought-provoking conversations like this one, and let's decode climate change together. Okay, how do you feel?
Good, you're doing great.
You just heard Climate Conversations with Divya, brought to you by Purple Figs Productions. We hope today's episode sparked new ideas and deeper curiosity about how we can tackle climate change together. Until next time, this is Climate Conversations with Divya. Stay curious, stay engaged, and let's shape a sustainable future together.